Testing one.
Good afternoon. For those that don't know, I'm Leanne Wilson, Little Rock School Board Member Zone 4. Thank you so much for being here. We're very excited you guys made the time to come meet one of our candidates, Dr. Wright. We're very grateful he made the time to come spend the day with us. If you would please sign in back if you have not done so. We have index cards if you would like to write a question. I will be asking them to him. And we also have the evaluation forms for feedback, so please get those if you have not done so. To start, I'm going to let Dr. Wright introduce himself. He's got about 7 to 10 minutes to introduce himself and tell about his past, his work history, why he wants to come to Little Rock, and then we'll get into the questions.
Oh, I forgot I have a mic on me. Good afternoon, everyone.
Cards, if you would like to write a question, I will be asking them to him. And we all.
So, good afternoon again. I've struggled all day long with the 10 minutes with the introduction, so having 7 minutes, I'm just going to wing it. So, first of all, I'm excited to be here. Glad to have the opportunity to discuss why I am interested in this particular role, give you a little bit about my background and some information about me personally, and I'll try to speed it up as quick as I possibly can to dedicate most of our time this afternoon to allowing me to entertain the questions that you have prepared for me. So you have a handout. I'm going to speed through it. I may not even reference everything on it, but I think it's important that before I get into ways in which I've impacted student achievement or giving you a little insight into my leadership style, I want you to know a little bit about me personally. So, born and raised and lived most of my life in Jacksonville, Florida, which is my hometown. Like many of you, my family is extremely important to me, especially since I moved away from home in 2009. So I have pictures of my family. I'm the last of 4 kids. You have my siblings that you see there. I always like to talk about my family, my siblings. You see my parents pictured here. And my parents are extremely important, just like most of our parents are, if not all of our parents, as to who I am today and why I do this work. And so for the sake of time, I'm not going to delve deeply into the impact that my parents and my family have had on me. But if you want to know more about me, my family, my background, you have that feedback form. After this session is over, make sure you let the board know that I am the person that you want to come back, and so that I will have more opportunity to share more about myself later on. I do have pictures of my children that are there, and of course my children are extremely important to me. I have a 20-year-old who is a student at Florida State, in Florida, of course. My daughter Trinity will be graduating high school this year, and then my youngest son Josh, who is 16, is a sophomore. And of course, everything that I do is for them because I want to make sure that they have an opportunity to experience all that this world has to offer. And I think it's my job as a parent to make sure that they have access to whatever it is they want to do and wherever it is that they want to go. And so they are the reason why I work as hard as I do. So in terms of ways in which I've impacted student achievement, I have 3 different examples that you have on the handout that you have. And I'll start first with my experience as a principal in DC. This was my 3rd principalship, and I'm not going to read through all the different ways in which we've, all the accomplishments that we made at that particular school. You can see them here. They are listed on the left-hand side of that particular square. But I do want to focus most of my time on how we were able to achieve the results that we achieved during my time at DC. And so I feel like the 7 minutes is just quickly going away. So you can read them here. Teacher leadership, and I do want to just spend just a minute on why teacher leadership is such an important part of my strategy at this stage of my particular career. It was actually during my time in DC where I had a leadership coach who was working with the Achievement Network, or ANET for short, who gave me some feedback in terms of you are doing too much as a principal. I led all of our grade level meetings. I led all of our data team meetings. I led all of our professional learning sessions with my staff. And so she pulled me aside and said, if you want to have maximum impact and if you want to reach more of your staff, you've got to distribute leadership and allow other people to engage and be a part of this process. And so we had 2 teachers in my building. One was a 2nd grade teacher, one was a 3rd grade teacher. And you talk about the ultimate ego busting moment Those two teachers had more influence, more impact with their peers. They reached more teachers. They had more of a greater impact on the things that we put in place in school, more so than I ever could. When they were leading professional learning, teachers were more apt to be more comfortable, to be transparent in terms of what they know, what they didn't know, how they asked for help. And so it was here during my experience that I really learned how important and valuable it was to utilize teachers in any school improvement process. I left DC in 2013, and I had my first central office job as the instructional superintendent with Denver Public Schools. Back then, Denver was about a 94,000 student district. I was tasked with the responsibility of leading our newest batch of turnaround elementary schools that had a certain number of years to show significant improvement or face closure, restart, which meant that everybody in the school would lose their job and we would rehire, or the most popular choice in that particular time was we had a large number of charter schools, charter networks in the city of Denver. The school was given over to a charter school. So within 3 years, through again the same focus with teacher leadership, a focus on early literacy, numeracy, intentional focus on social emotional learning at the youngest age level, kindergarten through second grade, pretty much my strategy has always been to, if you want sustainable, transformational achievement that is going to, improvement that is going to last the test of time, you can't just test prep your way out of school improvement. You know, we know that our third graders and above are the population that is, that typically takes accountability tests, and that's the area that we typically spend most of our time focusing on. I took the opposite approach. So I wanted to make sure that all of the gaps that our students had when they entered school in preschool and kindergarten in terms of literacy, in terms of math, their math content knowledge, that we address those, that we attack those as early as possible, that we had a comprehensive data system that we were able to assess quickly every 3 or 4 days. Back then we were using DRAs. I don't know if those of you who have been teaching a while, you know how lengthy and time consuming DRAs can be. So we created a fast track way to do DRAs or running records doing guided reading where we could quickly identify students' miscues, areas that they were struggling with. Every 2 to 3 days we had a tracker which every kindergarten through second grade student in it. So it would be updated every 2 and 3 days if they were not mastering, if they didn't recognize the number of letters, letter sounds, segments, whatever the targets were. We were able to quickly jump on it, attack it, and make sure those gaps were closed. So that by the time my students got to third grade, we didn't have to test prep. We didn't have to use shortcuts or gimmicks. Our students were well prepared. And so that is a strategy that I have always used. And it got us the results that you see here that I'm not going to spend time talking because I'm sure my 7 minutes are almost up. So I left Denver, went to Philadelphia briefly for only a year. And then I ended up as the chief academic officer in Birmingham, Alabama. I returned to the South and worked under the leadership of Lisa Herring, who is probably the best superintendent that I've ever worked for. She is now the superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools, and through her, she allowed me and gave me complete autonomy to run the academic division of that particular school district as I saw fit. And so we restructured everything in Birmingham School to make our central office more supportive and more responsive to the needs of our schools. So it's my belief that the core business of any school district is teaching and learning. Teaching and learning occurs in classrooms with students, with teachers, and with principals who are running buildings. And so the central office exists for us to serve and meet the needs of schools, not the other way around. Traditionally, you see a lot of central office staff or district office staff, they have in their minds that they exist for schools to serve them. And so we did a complete opposite approach in Birmingham. So that was a major cultural change. We had a lot of partners that worked with the different types of schools that we had in Birmingham to provide targeted support, and that resulted in the outcomes that you see here that I don't have enough time to go over each and every one of them, but you see them listed there. And then currently I am the superintendent of the Mississippi Achievement School District, which now consists of 2 districts in the Mississippi Delta, Yazoo City, and Humphreys County. The most challenging job I've ever had in my entire life, and that's saying a lot based on all the different places that I've been. And I think the biggest learning for me has been there's a major difference between urban poverty and rural poverty. And when you couple rural poverty with a pandemic, and you get just a exponential number of issues that we have to face as a school district that makes it extremely hard to even have a focus on teaching and learning, because there's so many different needs that our families and students have that we have to give attention to. But even in that difficult situation, we still have been able to achieve some remarkable things in 3 years. We have drastically improved graduation rates in both of the districts that I serve. We just got our graduation cohort data for, getting all my years mixed up, whatever last year was a few months ago. And so it has even increased even more. And so Humphreys County graduation rate is now at 91%, which has been the highest that has ever been in the history of the school district. And then in Yazoo City, I think we're still around 87, 88% versus the 60-something% that it was when I got there. And so there was no magic pill that we did to achieve that. We just simply had a lot of students who were either disengaged from school or were on the verge of being disengaged from school. I had large numbers of 12, 13, 14-year-old kids in elementary school, 16, 17-year-olds in middle school. And so what we simply did was to give those kids an opportunity to see that they still can be successful. And so with a lot of kids who are at risk for being disengaged or who have already disengaged, they don't have a sense of hope or a feeling that there is even a path for them to be successful to get out of school. And so one good thing about the pandemic, it gave us a lot of different access to technology tools that we can use to help them quickly get caught up, while also supporting them for their proper grade level courses so they can make up coursework and make up credits to get back on time. And so prior to me getting there, Yazoo City was in the top 10 of districts statewide who had the highest dropout rate, which also impacted our grad rates, which is why it was so low. And just by taking the time to create a path of success for many of our overage students, that single-handedly impacted our grad rates to where it is today. And I know I'm probably at 14 minutes at this point, so that's my introduction. I will stop and entertain questions.
Real quick, I'm going to have you clarify with one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
When you were talking about your time at Denver, and you talked about the percentage of your schools that were eligible for restart, closure, or charter conversion, can you tell us the outcome of what happened at the end of that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So 50% of our schools went from red, which is the equivalent of an F, to, we were colored, so I think that's yellow, which was the equivalent of a C. 25% of them, and I forgot to mention this, in Denver, that was my first time working with, so I didn't have majority African-American students in my schools. The majority of students in our schools were of Latinx descent, most of which spoke Spanish. So we provided instruction in Spanish from kindergarten, first and second, and then students began to bridge over into English to the upper elementary grades by the time they got to middle school. And then I had a couple of schools who were in the southwest portion of Denver that we housed a lot of the Sudanese refugees. And so the majority of black students in two of my schools were actually Sudanese refugees. And so if you can just imagine the trauma and things that we had to deal with those particular students. But one of those schools was the school that went from an F to a B. That was in that 25%, and then all of the schools made enough progress to where none of them had to close, were given over to charters or anything, and so they're still sustaining now. And some of those leaders who I had the opportunity to serve alongside are now instructional superintendents in Denver today.
I did actually let you go 10 minutes, but that's okay. I knew if I gave you 10, you'd talk 15. Okay, so first question. What strategies will have the greatest impact on learning loss in the post-pandemic world?
Actually, I think it's the same strategies that we would have used if we were not in a post-pandemic. Again, I'm going to go right back to the fact that, in our country, we have a crisis, and I know literacy isn't the linchpin for everything, but in my mind it is. And so we have large populations of kids sitting in middle schools and high schools today that are still illiterate. They can't read. Those foundational gaps with phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, comprehension, those things have never been addressed. And so all we do is cycle kids through grade after grade after grade after grade after grade, and we get what we have today. And so in my mind, we have got to go back and make sure all those gaps that kids have are closed before they get to third grade, and those kids that have already matriculated through the system, we have to have the right types of intervention supports, leadership, and accountability to make sure that the things that we have in place in the district are actually being done. I think I made a comment in a couple of other forums, that Little Rock has high quality core curriculum that is being used in the district. Little Rock has high quality intervention programs that are being used in the district. The degree to which they use, I think the degree to which they're being used is the issue. When I look at some of the, I got a hold of a piece of data, it was looking at dosage. Lexia Core Learning, which is a evidence-based program that focuses on a lot of those literacy skills. So I know it's being used in all of our schools, in elementary schools in particular. But when I look at the percentage of students who are getting the required minutes every single day or every single week on those programs, I don't think I saw a school where 100% of the kids were getting all of the minutes. And it was even more stark when I looked at schools who were lower performing than others. The dosage of students who were spending time with these programs, it was even less than it was in some of the other schools. And so we've got the right things in place. It's just a matter of making sure and holding folks accountable to implement them the way that they should be implemented.
I'm going to kind of blend this question, so it's multi-parts, because this was asked several times. How would you work with churches, nonprofits, and business communities to strengthen families, improve academics, and meet SEL needs?
One more time.
Okay. How would you work with churches, nonprofits, and the business community to strengthen families, improve academics, and meet SEL needs?
So when we think about the broad array of social, emotional learning, mental health needs of our students, of our staff, and even of our families, it is not a job that the school district can handle of itself. And so we are going to have partners across all spectrums, whether it's faith-based, nonprofits, whomever is willing to help. We need everyone. And I think also when you think about churches and some other organizations within the community, sometimes they have a better reach on parents than schools. And so I know a lot of times we still struggle as schools to really engage parents the way that we need to. And so we can partner with our churches and other organizations where our parents probably attend more so than they attend school functions. And so I think the more partnerships we have with churches, with nonprofits, with other organizations, I think the better off we will be to help address the myriad of SEL issues that we have, not just in Little Rock, but I'm sure we all know it's not just specific to here. These are needs all over the country, and it's not a job that we can do as a school district by ourselves. So the more partners, the better.
So taking that a step further, how do you create those partnerships? What do you do?
So the good thing about Little Rock, at least from what I've read, and I'm hoping what I read is painting an accurate picture. There are a lot of partners and volunteers and organizations that are already working within Little Rock. A couple of that I know very well because when I was a principal in DC, I worked with City Year. And I was happy to see City Year, I don't know how many schools they're working in just four. City Year was instrumental in helping to change the culture of our students. And oftentimes those core members had, honestly, a better relationship with some of the students than the teachers themselves. And so it really helped to have, for students to have others in the building that they could talk to, relate to, that could help address some of the issues that they have. And it really cuts down on the need for a lot of punitive disciplinary measures. The question was what was the question? So I started off by saying there were a lot already here. I think I will assess the degree to which those partners are being used. Are they being maximized, utilized the correct way? And I think one strength that I do have, if you look at the back part of the handout that I didn't get a chance to get to when it talks about my leadership style, one of the strengths I have is one of being a connector. So I am very good with reaching out to various entities to establish those types of relationships, whether it's funders, whether it's other types of supports. And so I'm sure that I will utilize that skill set to expand upon the partners that are already working with us, and then making sure that the partners that are already with us, that we're using them and maximizing them to the greatest extent possible. And of course, funding comes in to play with how a lot of this work gets done. And so I need to learn a little bit more how a lot of these partnerships and programs or initiatives are funded. But I think, we could do some work within the state of Arkansas, because I did not know that there was so much wealth available in this state from various entities. And so it's just a matter of forming those right types of relationships and capitalizing on some of the resources that are here within the state to support the work that we need to do in our district.
Yeah. All right, please explain how you define diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. How will you ensure all of these will be a priority in schools, classrooms, and within the administration?
So I'm going to answer that question in a backward sort of way. A question that I've gotten or comments that I have heard a lot since I have been here has been around competition with charter schools and private schools. And so I will say that if our students and families don't feel a sense of belonging within our schools, or our schools aren't a place where people want to come and feel welcome when they enter into our school buildings, that we are going to continue to lose students and families. And so we've got to create a culture within our district and within our schools to where every student feels they have a connection with somebody. We have a lot of adults that work in schools beyond teachers, and so I think it's incumbent upon schools to find a way, especially for those kids who are the most at risk, to make sure that every child has someone that they can go to, that they can connect with, that can help support and build them up and support them to perform better in school. And so diversity, equity, and inclusion and a sense of belonging are just things that we have to do as a district. I know I've heard a lot about there's the schools that have, and then there's the schools that are kind of classified as have-nots. And I believe that the have-nots are those schools that are located in more impoverished areas within the city. And so I think I'm a huge believer and promoter, and I hate that this is being recorded, but I know that this word has become a dirty word lately, the word equity. It's been associated with many things that it has nothing to do with, but I am a firm believer in doing whatever we need to do to support the needs that our kids and our students have. And so everybody may not get the same thing, but everybody will get what they need and everybody will get what they deserve.
Have you had any experience with the community school model, and if so, with what outcomes? So
I'm very well aware of what the community school model is, and it's just simply the school being the hub within the community, that families can get access to services and supports beyond providing education to kids, whether it's healthcare, whether it's social service needs, whether it's financial assistance with utility bills, food, connecting them with agencies and services within the building. And so even though the school that I led as principal in DC was not an official community school per se, it was a community school. We had lots of different partnerships. And so if you are or not familiar with where Leckie Elementary School is, it is in the southwest, the most southwest corner of DC that there is, right before you get to the Maryland border. Have anybody ever been to the new, well, it's not even new anymore, the huge Gaylord casino shopping area that was built in Maryland? Yeah, well, it's not far from there. But across the other side of 295 is joint bases of Anacostia Bowling, the Bowling Air Force Base. So those kids were supposed to come to my school, but of course with military families, they can go anywhere that they want to go, and they, of course, get provided transportation, all that stuff. So we worked very hand in hand with the commander of JBAB, which is short for the Joint Base of Anacostia Bowling, to make our school one to where military families would want their children to come. He was so gung-ho about making that happen for families who lived on the military base that we eventually, I think the children on the base eventually, by the time I left, made up about 10% of our student population, when before we had none. He also was able to provide us access to counseling, therapy. We had access to all different types of supports. And so that's why I kind of view Leckie as a community school, because we were able to capitalize on resources we got from partners to be able to provide for all of our students within our school. And so I thoroughly believe in the community school model. And I think now, especially in this post-pandemic time, well, I hope we're in the post-pandemic, the needs are even greater than they were before.
What have you kind of answered this, but taking it a step further, what have you done in the schools you have been to raise awareness of all the good things happening? Our school district has a real image in the community because of perception.
So I can easily answer this. So I am in the Mississippi Delta, working in 2 districts that are deemed the worst performing districts in the state of Mississippi, where there is nothing good anybody associates with either of the places that I work. And so with the limited number of funds and resources that I had, I thought it was extremely important that we paint a picture to show all the good stuff that was happening and is happening in our district. And so we have as small of a district we are, I hired a very skilled marketing, communications, graphics, website. That sounds like 5 different jobs, but it was one person who did it all. And his whole purpose and job was to, go into schools every single day, take pictures, videos of good things happening with our, students participating in academic competitions, nothing athletics, because that's the only thing that we always typically publicize. And so we rebranded ourselves with a new Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter. Our website was totally redone. And so we are constantly, every single day, we shoot out at least 3 to 4 different positive things that are happening in schools throughout our district. And it led to a couple of things. Number one, it led to a different outlook that people across the state and within our local community began to have on the school. And it actually attracted a few people who actually became employees in our district, which it is extremely hard. I'm telling you, no one wanted to work in the districts that I worked in unless you were living in those particular communities. It takes me an hour to drive back and forth to work, and I have several staff members who live in the Jackson metro area who drive that way to work every single day because they want to be there and they liked the different image that we were projecting in terms of our school district. And so it's not just about image, but it's also about changing the narrative about how we as educators and adults how we serve our families. And so I'm a stickler for, I don't care how bad the building looks, because we have a lot of old facilities that are in need of a lot of repair. But when people walk through our doors, they should know that this is a learning environment. This is a school. And if you know anything about working in a small town, people are very familial with each other. And so how they were in the community was how they were in our schools. And so it's not just about the marketing of good things. It's also changing how we welcome folks and making sure that everybody who works in our school approaches their work as a professional, regardless of what your job title is. And so I think all of those things are ways in which we could broadcast positive, good things that are happening about the district. And everything that I've learned about Little Rock, and especially things that I've seen today, there is a lot of good. There's a lot of good. And so it's just how do we capitalize on all the good stuff and make sure that everybody knows about it.
Actually have gone through all of our questions. So I'm going to ask a rogue one, and then I think Allie has some. Staff and employee morale is a huge challenge, I think, everywhere. I know it is where I work. It is in the district. What would be a way you would tackle staff and employee morale?
So I would say, number one, that's a leadership issue, because it is the leader's role, whether it's a department leader, school leader, leader in the district, it's their role to establish the type of culture and environment in the workplace. And so if we recognize, and we know that before the pandemic, our teachers were beyond burnt out. Now that we're in the pandemic, having to deal with all the things that we're dealing with, we know that they're beyond stressed and burnt out. And so it's a leadership's responsibility to figure out how to make folks not just feel good, but feel good even with all the things that they have on their plates to do. And you do that by reminding folks every single day about why this job is so important. And for me, for many of our students, for many of our families, education can sometimes be the only thing or the only avenue that some kids may have to experience a life different than what they have now. And so for many kids, and why I'm so serious about what I do is this is it. This is the only opportunity. And so regardless of how stressed we may be, regardless of all the stuff that is going on around our world, I don't think anybody entered this profession not wanting to make a difference in the life of a child. And so constantly reminding people about why we do this work, why this work is so important, why Johnny, Susie, whoever is dependent upon us to show up every single day, even with all of the baggage that we're dealing with, it's important. And I think leaders have to constantly remind people about this compelling vision and why we do what we do. And they also have to find ways in which to make folks feel, with all of the workload that we have on us to do, that they still are valuable, they still are important. And again, establishing that culture and climate within the school, within the department, or within whatever the organization is, where people feel appreciated. People who feel appreciated, who feel valued, who are united by a vision that is bigger than themselves, will still go the extra mile. And again, you have to have leaders in place who are able to establish that culture and climate with that compelling vision, and do what is necessary to keep folks engaged. So it's a leadership issue to me.
And had a follow-up question. We talked a little bit about charter schools, private schools being competition, but besides just losing students, how can we increase enrollment in our district?
So again, it's almost like you can't test prep your way out of sustained school improvement. You can't turn a magic pill and stop the bleeding of enrollment until we have a quality service and a product that people want. And so if people are leaving us, they're leaving for a reason. What is the reason that they're living? And what is the reason that they are leaving? So real quick, I'll try to make this as succinct as possible. So a lot of the schools that I supported in Denver, we had a lot of charter schools all around us, two in particular, that was siphoning a lot of our kids like left and right. And so, I would hear my principals all the time, it's not fair. They don't have to abide by the same laws and regulations that we do, blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's all fine and good. We don't have time to sit here and whine about that. That's, it is the way it is. So for our next principal meeting, we're going to this school. What? No? Huh? What? Yeah, so I had several principal meetings with my principals inside of the charter schools who are our main competition. Now, I had a decent enough relationship with the charter leaders to be able to do so, but I told my principals, when we observe classrooms, when we observe classroom school operations, I want you to figure out what is it that they're doing that we aren't doing while we're losing kids. And so we can complain all we want about what's fair, what's not fair, but this is a competition. And I think it's the same way here in Little Rock. It is a competition. And so we've got to be savvy about figuring out why parents are leaving us, and then determining what we can do in our district to make our district the district and the school of choice for families. And so to me, it's no sense in complaining about what is, regardless of if there's a political agenda behind it, that political agenda isn't going to go away. And I don't think it's anything that any of us sitting in this room can do anything about, really, other than making sure that what we provide our families and what we provide our students is better than what they're getting somewhere else. And so to me, that's going to be the only way that we're going to be able to address it and fix it.
So ESL students are struggling in regular classes. What do you suggest to help these students succeed?
The same thing that we would do for a non-ESL student who is not struggling. It's the same exact thing. So the kids, like I explained before, the majority of the students that I served in Denver were Spanish-speaking kids. And so the same early literacy strategies approach, the same early numeracy strategies approach, were the same thing that worked for them. As a matter of fact, our ESL students were outperforming our African-American students with these same supports by leaps and bounds once they capitalized on the support that we were providing. So it's no different. It's no different than what we would do for any child who's struggling.
How do you plan to specifically get more parents involved on school campuses?
So, great question. I was sharing with the, I forgot which group it was. I don't know if it was the classified, certified group or I don't know. And just that quickly, I've forgotten the question. What was the question?
How do you plan to get parents involved on school campus?
So I was sharing with them a research article or paper or something that I read within the last week or so, where it was talking about parents' view of parent engagement and the school's view of parent engagement. And what the two viewed as engagement were two totally different things. From the school perspective, it was parents coming to the school for parent-teacher conferences, being a part of the PTA. It was actually parents being physically within the space. That's how schools were defining parent engagement. From the parent perspective, it was totally different. For them, it was, as long as I am helping support the school by making sure and ensuring my child is doing what he or she needs to do, as long as they even went as far as to talk about emailing teachers. They viewed that as a form of engagement. So I think number one we need to do is redefine what parent engagement is and why is it needed? Like, why do we need parents to be engaged? We need parents to be engaged because we need their support to help us ensure that their children master grade level content. That does not mean that parents have to physically be in a school space. Being a part of the PTA isn't going to necessarily ensure that their child is going to improve. And so I think we as a district need to redefine what parent engagement is and figure out other ways in which parents can, because the ultimate end goal is that we want parents to know what children need, how they're doing, and what they can do to help. And as long as that is being done, to me, that's the end goal. And so we can't expect parents to be able to show up every time they're called within a school setting, especially in some circumstances, because there's just no way, earthly possible way for them to do so, especially for parents who work, who may work multiple jobs, who may work non-traditional hours. It's just not possible. And so we have to redefine what parent engagement looks like and provide avenues and mechanisms and show parents ways in which they can still support and be actively engaged in the child's educational process, and doesn't mean that they have to physically be on the school's campus.
Currently, the school district seems to be suffering from a lack of bus drivers, leading to inconsistent bus schedules and increased commute times. What's your plan to solve this?
That's not a fair question.
I know.
Even in my small district, we suffer from this same issue. I think the only thing that has saved us is we had, prior to me coming, we had a lot of staff members, even a lot of teachers who used to drive buses. Since I've gotten there, that practice has kind of stopped. But now we've gone back to it again. I think the major issue was around contract. So like a lot of our teachers who may have been driving buses didn't get to school during like the time they were supposed to be at work. But we have since been much more flexible with those requirements because we need bus drivers. And so the only thing that has really saved us is us going back to allowing some of our staff to drive buses, which have kind of helped solve the issue. Now, I don't know if that is a solution that will work here, but probably not. Probably not. However, I do know that in other places, people have, even in districts that have raised compensation for bus drivers, they still are experiencing the same issue. And I think now the competition for jobs and for people is just higher than I think it's ever been. Even jobs that may have paid lower wages before are now paying higher wages, and there's many different options for people. You know, one of the biggest struggles for us was that year, so we didn't officially have 100% virtual up until, and it wasn't for an entire school year, it's just when our case count just became so, it was just too much. But a lot of our students, our high school students, started getting jobs. And ever since they started getting jobs and making money, it has been hard to get them back in school since we have been back in person. So again, I know this has nothing to do with bus drivers, but it was a way for me to kind of get out of the question because I don't really have an answer for it. So my answer is we're going to keep praying.
Yeah, maybe we could partner with some of our local nonprofits to help
Thank you.
us with transportation.
We can partner with some of our nonprofits to help us address our transportation issues.
Since we have like 2 minutes left, what is one thing you didn't get to say that you want everyone in the room to know about you or about why you're the right fit for this job?
So I think at this stage of the process, I don't think I would be here today if I didn't have the qualifications for the job. So at this point, it is just determining if I am a good or the best fit for Little Rock School District. I can tell you at this stage of career, one of the things that excited me about my current job is because it presented such an opportunity to really make a huge difference in the experience that our students had in the Delta. And so I want to be at a place where I have the resources, both human, fiscal, partnerships, and I can tell you the partnerships here and the resources here and some of the programs that exist in the district is one of the things that attracted me to this particular job. Second thing, I am tired. If I move one more time, I'm not moving anymore. And so this will be it for me. I'm looking for a place to call home. I'm looking for a place that will have the quality of life that I would like to have so that I could live and fulfill my life's purpose, which is what I'm doing now. And so for me, I just think I want this community to know and understand and realize that I don't apply for random jobs. I don't look for random opportunities. I look for opportunities that I think are going to be a great fit for me. And now that I have been here and have met several individuals, have had these opportunities to meet different folks in community forums, there's a lot of support in this city for Little Rock School District. There's a lot of support. And I think the momentum is there. I think because the district is coming out of state takeover, I think our board is extremely motivated to do whatever needs to be done to ensure that we never go back to that place again. And so for a person like me, this is the perfect opportunity for me. It's the perfect place to live, very low cost of living. I'm not going back to Philly, Denver, or DC because I want a yard and a garden. And
Our traffic is much better than any of those places.
Yes. So I know that this is a good fit for me. And so at this point, I really want you to utilize the time that you have on those feedback forms to let the board know that I'm the best person for this role. Thank you.
Yes, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. This was supposed to end at 5. Please complete the form and leave them if at all possible. Because we really do want your input and what you thought, strengths, weaknesses. But I am going to ask one more question for those who can stay. And this is not a 1-minute question, but I'm going to ask it. Master grade level content plus court cases from school fights called assaults. What's your solution?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
That's master grade level content plus court cases from school fights called assaults. What's your solution?
So I think these are two different things. So for master and grade level content, great question. So often in schools where you have a lot of students who are not performing on grade level, our first go-to is always interventions. It is always intervention. We're going to do pull-outs. We're going to put them in this tutoring program. We're going to use blah, 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 blah. That is nothing but a recipe for a recipe for a continued cycle of failure. And so I don't care how far behind kids are, every kid needs access to grade level content every single day, especially in the area of literacy. Kids are never going to catch up, perform on grade level, unless they have access to grade level content every single day. And there are strategies and ways in which teachers can do that, even with kids who are 3 and 4 and 5 levels behind. And so we've got to do that. We can't just focus. We've got to have strong core tier 1 instruction. Our go-to cannot be intervention. It cannot be pullouts. It cannot be sending them to someone else. We've got to have teachers who are equipped with the skills and knowledge and the competence to know how to give kids access to grade level content every single day. That's the only way over time we're going to get kids caught up to where they need to be. The other issue I think is something separate. Court cases from school fights called assaults your solution. So I'm going to step out on a potential landmine. I have not studied the code of conduct in Little Rock School District in depth, but I'm going to say that every fight is not an assault.
Thank you.
Every fight is not an assault. Every fight is not an assault. We over-criminalize behavior, and we get kids caught up in cycles. And so that's my answer to the question. Every fight is an assault. And so I don't know how it's categorized in our code, but it's not.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Yeah, you guys thank Dr. Wright for his time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good meeting you all.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here. Please, please, please give us your feedback. Please. We want that. So,